Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Friday Ramblings. We have returned once again to discuss some of the most interesting bits of pop culture and entertainment with you. We are going back to something we've discussed before, and that is G.I. Joe. Of course, everybody knows the Real American Hero toy line and its accompanying cartoon. We've discussed the cartoons, we've discussed the theatrical movie, but now we want to look at what happened after the Real American Hero era ended, and that is, there was a bit of a rest period for a few years, and then we got new toys with new characters and new cartoon series. So real quick, we're going to go ahead and break down how G.I. Joe animation has continued through the last few decades. Real quick breakdowns, because again, we just want to give you just little appetizers to encourage you to go seek out this entertainment yourself. We are not here to spoilerific you. We are not here to make you feel like you know so much you don't need to bother. Because it's entertainment. It should be embraced and enjoyed and experienced. Lots of ease. First up, we have the G.I. Joe Extreme series. Released in the fall of 1995 up through February of 1997. Yes, that wonderful mid-90s where everything had to have the word extreme to it if you wanted to market it to anybody under the age of 30. And the G.I. Joe Extreme series was produced by Sunbow Entertainment, who had co-produced the first G.I. Joe TV series, along with Graz Entertainment, Gunther Wall Productions, and was part of a checkerboard series of cartoons that distributor Claster Television sold to stations under the umbrella title of the Power Block. It ran for 26 episodes, which, is a standard episode order. Tends to pop up a lot. It's a good number. You can split it into two 13-episode seasons, which is what usually happens. And it featured a whole new ball game. New characters, new set of Joes, new villains. This time we got a Joe team led by Lieutenant Stone and featuring such characters as token female character Mayday, Black Dragon, Metalhead, Quick Strike, Ballistic, Harpoon, and various others who would fight against the new terrorist supreme Iron Claw and his organization SCAR. Of course, that is an acronym, SKAR. As, let's face it, all good villain organizations should be an acronym. This is an interesting take on the G.I. Joe series because it fully embraced the fact that by the mid-90s we were through the Cold War and the old way of doing things. This was the era of Middle East conflicts and just a reorganization of international politics. So the focus was not so much on Cobra Commander just trying to take over the world like the classic comic book villain, but Iron Claw, who had disguised himself as the former count of an Eastern European country, trying to take advantage of widespread chaos as several villainous factions around the world were vying for control. Thus, you need a new Joe team for a new era. As we said, it only ran 26 episodes, and while it's generally not remembered iconically, it is important to note it was the first major overhaul of the G.I. Joe line. This was not simply reimagining already established characters. They did a full-on new heroes, new villains, bam. With the toy line, the cartoon, they went back to the Real American Hero blueprint of what worked. And unfortunately it didn't, but that's okay. Because it was just what it was. Wasn't a bad series, but kind of like Extreme Ghostbusters, and it really just came at a time where audiences, they had a lot to look at, including stuff that was completely new, and the idea of refreshing IPs wasn't something people embraced as much as we do now. Now, you pretty much say, oh, hey, here's something that's hasn't been around for more than 5 years. People go freaking nuts over it. Back then, it was a different ballgame. So, G.I. Joe Extreme, unfortunately, was extremely short-lived. Now, your next go-round, they would do something a little different. And that is that their next toy line would be, as I had said before, more of a reimagining of the classic Real American Hero line. This time, instead of trying to repeat the formula, they just plain took the old formula and put a new label on it. Thus, we had the toy line called G.I. Joe vs. Cobra. And to go with it, new animation. This time it started off with a pair of movies that were sent direct to video. And this is G.I. Joe Spy Troops and Valor vs. Venom. Familiar faces, a little bit of tweaks. It's a brand new timeline though. Now, the good news is the original one, Spy Troops, was written by Larry Hama, who wrote the original Marvel Comics for G.I. Joe run, which we have also discussed in its own video, as well as helped create the bio cards for the characters on the original Real American Heroes toy line set. In many ways, Larry Hama is one of the top names when it came to building the Real American Hero franchise. So bringing him in to start off the revival was a good idea. After the two movies, which established your base idea of your Cobra Commander and G.I. Joe reimagining for the early 2000s, we got in 2005 remember this number again, folks, 26 episode series called G.I. Joe Sigma 6. Now, at the start of the Sigma 6 series, Cobra Commander is in prison due to the events of Valor vs. Venom, and General Hawk is suffering his own physical injuries. And otherwise, it is, in many ways, both a reimagining and, in small, subtle ways, a continuation of the Real American Hero line. Duke is the G.I. Joe Commander. Although his aging has been tweaked, so he's a man just starting his 30s as opposed to a man reaching his 40s as he was portrayed in the older media. Snake Eyes has his apprentices from the comic books, such as Kamakura and Jinx. So there's plenty of ninjas to go around. And it's just a lot of good stuff. Now, in Season 2, because as I said, they like to split these 26-episode orders into 13-episode seasons, they did bring in Lieutenant Stone, or rather, a variant of Lieutenant Stone, you recall us bringing up in G.I. Joe Extreme. This gives you a little bit of a nod to the previous cartoon. That's the thing. Most of Sigma 6 had a recurring man versus machine theme, as Cobra forces are almost completely composed of the infamous Battle Android Trooper, or BATS, and the human members of Cobra themselves have either cybernetic implants or wearing some sort of highly technological battle suit. So, even though the Joes have some pretty high-tech weaponry, the fact that they themselves are generally not physically enhanced does give it that whole, good old American muscle can beat anything mindset. Which is not a bad thing, but can mess with your sense of building a long-term cartoon series, because there's only so many times you can sit there and beat up a glorified toaster. Still, Sigma 6 was well received and did prove ultimately what a lot of people know, which is once you've had a successful iteration of an idea, the Real American Hero line, you're better off rebooting it than just trying to introduce a whole new generation of it. People can't get enough of Duke, Snake Eyes, Cobra Commander, Storm Shadow, Scarlet, Lady J, Tunnel Rat, Shipwreck, Zartan. These are the characters that survive the decades, so their fans want more iterations of them. Which of course leads us to their next go-round a couple years later. This time things went a little different, bringing in comic book and television writer Warren Ellis in spring of 2007, running through 2 years and ending in spring of 2009. We got a series of short webisodes, little 5-minute, 10-minute for the finale, 5 and 10, 5, 10, woo! But still, shorts featuring the G.I. Joe team under the banner of G.I. Joe Resolute. These were anime-influenced, adult-oriented episodes, and were put up on the Adult Swim Video website with a content rating of TV 14-V for violence, eventually appearing as a full-length movie on Adult Swim. As we said, it being anime influenced and more adult oriented, as they were trying to appeal to the folks that would have been around towards the tail end of Real American Hero, had probably given Extreme a chance, and were older audiences when Sigma 6 was around. It has a darker and more realistic tone compared to the previous installments in the franchise, and using elements from both the cartoons and the long-running comic book series. Ultimately, though, as we said, they produced just enough content for a good one-night binge. A couple of hours and you're done. Onion rings, even. It should be noted, though, that we are including this in here because it is animated, and it did help keep the idea of G.I. Joe animation alive for a little bit longer until coinciding with the release of the live-action movies, we get the most recent series, and even then it has been a while, so we're probably due for another reboot somewhere around here. Although it seems like Hasbro's been sticking closer to the toy line and comic books than embracing cartoons. We have G.I. Joe Renegades. Once again, 26 episodes. God, I love that number. I keep telling you, that number is going to show up more and more. Deeper and deeper you dig into the history of animation on television. Airing on the Hub, currently known as Discovery Family, and airing from November of 2010 to July of 2011, G.I. Joe Renegades helped shake things up by, yes, we're still using the basic Real American Hero cast, but this time, things are changing. According to the opening narration, accused of a crime they didn't commit, a ragtag band of fugitives fights a covert battle to clear their names and expose the insidious enemy that is Cobra. Yep, this time a core gathering of G.I. Joe members become fugitives after being set up for crimes they did not commit by Cobra, who is trying to keep them from exposing their latest corrupt America from within subtle scheme. Now, this occurred a lot more in the comics than did in the cartoons, which is cool. They are referencing, classic, successful ways of portraying the characters. Now, this one was developed by Henry Gilroy, Jeff Klein, Marty Eisenberg. And as we said, was aired on the Hub, along with Darby Pop Productions and, of course, Hasbro Studios, since Hasbro owns G.I. Joe license. Honestly, it has some really good visuals. The animation itself is great. But the fact that it also, besides being yet another reiteration of the core Real American Hero cast, the series itself was as much a continuation of G.I. Joe as it was, at least from the writer's perspective, an homage to the A-Team. It was an awkward show. There's a reason it didn't get past its initial 26 episode order. It was kind of there. That and the fact that the live action films, which came around at the same time, did not become as huge and big a deal as some people had hoped. Was a different problem as well. Rise of Cobra had come out in 2009. And, I don't know. I'm going to do a review of the two G.I. Joe movies on another video. The two live actions, I should say, because, as I said at the start of this, we already did a review of the original animated movie. Still, Renegades tried its best, and it had some good ideas. But ultimately, I think the writers got too bogged down in trying to make it a different take on G.I. Joe while still having a classic feel, even if that was a feel of other classic TV shows like the A-Team. Honestly, given it was produced as part of the attempted reinvigorating of the franchise with the live action movie, I'd probably, even if you had to push it back another year to make sure everybody got on the same page, I'd have done it more as a blatant spin-off of the movie, you know? Instead of having the live-action movie, having people see that, have those characterizations in their head, and then seeing the cartoon series where you got different characters with different characterizations and an entirely different plot. Seemed a little awkward. Gotta have your synergy. Synergy's good. Keep everything together. Like this. See? It works together. It's not butting against each other, it's together. Not this. This. But hey, as always, we do say, even if something is not my personal cup of tea and my super joy, I do give full credit to everybody involved in the production of all of these cartoons, because that is what we are here for. You know? We are here to remind you, the people that make this stuff, they're working hard. And they're trying to make something worth watching. May or may not always work for you, but each of these shows did have their own audience, and you can find people online who did enjoy these shows and wished there was more episodes. Still, when it's all said and done, G.I. Joe will never be that far away. As I said, we've had the live action series. They've talked about doing some other film stuff. As I said, I'm sure another cartoon series will not be far away. I will say this personally. I mean, again, I love the Real American Hero franchise. But especially if you're going to do something with a cartoon and you do want to get more than the iconic 26 episode count out of it, I would go back to the idea of G.I. Joe Extreme and debuting a whole new generation. You know, keep a couple older characters around as like mentor figures. You know, Duke, Snake Eyes. Maybe on the villain side, have like Destro, Baroness, you know, funding the new organization quietly in the background. But bring in new blood. Bring in something where the old fans, they can see it's a continuation of what they knew and loved without it just being reheated leftovers. But at the same time, give them something new, and the fans that are young and don't really have a lot of nostalgia attached to anything involving the name G.I. Joe, something of their own. You can only reheat leftovers so many times. You can only rewrap the same gift so many times before it starts to lose its luster. Or at the very least, give it a good, long, like 10, 12-year nap. I mean, give people time to get a serious nostalgia craving built up if you're going to keep rewrapping the same gift. But that's just my opinion, and as I've said before, I do salute the creative teams behind everything we talk about here on the Ramblings. And I do encourage you to go seek these shows out anywhere you can find them. Watch them for yourself. Make your own decisions. Let me know in the comments if you were a fan of any of these cartoons. You know? Did you like Sigma 6? Are you missing some Extreme in your life? Maybe you did like Renegades and wish that more of that story had come through. Go for it. When it's all said and done, though, I do ask you keep your comments constructive. If you want to personally insult me, hit me up on the privates chat. Don't flood the public forums with a bunch of pure anger. We want this to be an enjoyable space for everybody. So, till next time you see me, I want you to stay happy, stay safe, and stay entertained. I will be back to help you find more entertainment. Bye-bye.